Welcome to Dreams. We've got Mr. Lance Casey Jackson on with us today, one of the longest running cats I've known in the industry. We go back almost 20 years, and he's got a few years on me. So let's pop him in, have him tell you his story, how he got started in music, and those moments that kept him pursuing music, and then as well where he sees himself going. Casey,
Hey, good morning.
how are you, sir?
Good. It's a little,
I see we got it. Yeah, Instagram has these little issues every now and then.
there's a little bit of a struggle there.
Yeah. How you been, man? Go ahead and welcome to Dreams. This is, as you may have seen, we do a 3-segment interview with people in the industry, and since none of us are working right now, it's like the perfect time to call on folks that are still working. And I guess if you want to start us off, introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and then we'll go into the next segment.
My name is Lance Jackson. My friends in the industry know me as KC Jackson. Been around for a little while. I started in the business back in 1978, and I somehow managed to survive doing concert tours all over time.
Lance, Casey, tell us a little about like how you got into music. Was it something that was always in you as a child? Did you play music? Do you remember like a musical memory that like solidified your love for this?
Been involved in music since I guess I was in 8th grade. Played in a couple of local bands. I think one of the things that really inspired me was a friend of mine arranged for me and another friend to go to Temple Stadium to see Jimi Hendrix. Yeah,
Shoot.
and it was kind of stayed with me. Kind of stayed with me. Still one of my favorite artists.
I would think so. Getting to see Hendrix is like something in a history book. It's a bucket list. So, man.
Yeah, he actually died 1 year after we saw him. So that was one of those once in a lifetime shots. But I was a bass player. I picked around on the guitar and keep time on drums. And I was a guy in the band that always ended up having to fix other people's stuff. I have this knack for how things work, taking things apart. And had no idea at the time that it would end up setting the pace for a career. So I spent quite a bit of my career as a backline technician, mostly teching guitars, keyboards, drums. But I actually went to school for audio engineering, and that's how I actually got my initial foot in the door to do my first tour in 1978.
Wow. And who was that tour with?
This was a band called Love, Togetherness, and Devotion, LTD as they were known. They were the opening act guest star on the Commodore's Platinum Tour in 1978. And I had the privilege to mix for them June of 1978 through November of 1978. Initially as a front of house engineer, then when our monitor engineer left the tour, I got moved into his position since I knew the show. And that was my humble beginning.
I remember LTD. I can't get that song right on the tip of my tongue, but I know which band you're talking about.
Back in Love Again, Love Ballad.
Love Ballad.
I'll throw a name out there and it'll ring an instant bell. Jeffrey Osborne.
Jeffrey was in LTD.
Him and his,
I did not know that.
And his brother, Jeffrey, was the lead singer for LTD. Jeffrey later went on to pursue a solo career, as you know. And
for sure.
LTD is still around. They still occasionally work. And like I said, I'm always humbled that if it wasn't for them, I would not have got my foot in the door. So I have a lot of respect for LTD.
It's always those first ones that get us, going. I cut my teeth, I told you, with Brian McKnight, and then after that, it was just kind of a snowball.
Right.
What'd you do after LTD? What were some of the opportunities that came your way and ones that you were like, yeah, I'm doing that? No, I'm not doing that.
It's kind of funny. I remember a conversation I had with the road manager for LTD at the end of my first tour. I'd never toured before as Green. So I asked him, what's next? And he looked at me and he kind of smiled. He says, I don't know about you, but we're going to probably take a vacation When we come back, maybe we'll spend some time in the studio, and if we get another hit, maybe we'll go back on the road. And I figured, well, maybe he didn't get what I was asking him. So I said, what about me? He says, well, can't you go back to the job that you were working? And I had left a job at SIR to go on the road, and the policy back then was if you go on the road, you can't come back and work here. So I sat home from November of 1978 till March of 1979, and I got a call to help set up a press party for a new band. That band turned out to be the Gap Band.
Oh, wow.
So I did the press party, and then I got called back to do a couple of weeks of promos, and then it turned into a tour. So that was my second tour. And I did a little bit of everything on that tour. I drove a truck. I was into the martial arts back then. I helped with security at the gigs. I mixed monitors, and I also tech guitars.
Wow. How many personnel was out with the Gap Band? That was 79, you said?
1979. There were 4 of us on a backline crew, front of house engineer. We would use whoever was available to do the lights. We had a couple of security guys, valet, and an interesting bus situation. You'll love this. We had a bus with all of those people and 6 bunks.
Oh my gosh.
It's like the biggest back lounge of any bus I ever rode on. Like when you got past the middle section into the stateroom in the back, it was a huge horseshoe couch with a giant table in the middle of it. Like a rolling conference room back there.
All right.
We would go 3 deep in the truck, and trucks had sticks in it, so the guy riding in the middle would get his knees beat up for part of the drive. And then once you drove, you could get out of the truck and get on the bus, and then somebody had to get off the bus and get into the truck. It was kind of different back then. We had a very crowded bus, needless to say. But that's how we got around between the truck and the bus. And we opened for Teddy Pendergrass on a good part of that tour. Some shows with the OJs. We were privileged to do a couple of the world's greatest funk festivals in that run. So it was an interesting year. It's 1980 going into 81. In 1980 was the first year I had multiple clients. I was a bass guitar tech and guitar tech for Larry Graham's 1 in a Million U tour. I caught the tail end of the Rick James Garden of Love tour as a guitar tech. And I actually got to go work with LTD the last year. I believe that Jeffrey was there before he went solo. But I came out as a guitar tech as opposed to sound engineer that year.
And so by the mid 80s, what were you doing? Well, I want to go back to that real quick, the truck bus situation, because the first year that I toured, laptops and phones were just coming into play, but not too many people had them. I remember a contract book about this thick that I had to thumb through. So what was communicating like back then?
There were pay phones. Legal tablet was your laptop or your tablet. Legal tablet was the tablet. There were no cell phones. There were no satellite TV on buses. Internet didn't exist. So we would, like, at a truck stop, you'd see the road manager get off, and he'd have a bag of coins, and he'd go by a pay phone, and he was advancing shows as you were on the road rolling.
Wow.
Everything was paper. I actually have over in my archive over there a box of just legal tablets, just notes, diagrams, schematics of my rigs, advancing when I was production manager on some gigs. So it wasn't until thinking 80s, the early 80s, coming into the mid 80s. I think my first computer was a pocket computer, a Radio Shack pocket computer. That would have been 1982.
Wow.
1983, a VIC-20, Commodore 64, Texas Instruments TI-99, 4A. Then when they came out with the, what do you call it, the Model 100. It's Radio Shack's version of the early tablet. It had 8 lines of text. It had a built-in modem. This was going from, I would say, the mid 80s through the latter part of the 80s. Everybody had one of these things. I know on the Purple Rain tour, which I did 1984 to 85, the production office, that was like, when we went to the production office, this is how they were communicating stuff.
Wow. That was a pretty big tour, the Purple Rain tour. My goodness.
In its day, it was huge in its day. And it wasn't really that many trucks, believe it or not. I mean, compared to today's standards of what a big tour is. But it was a big tour. We played multiple dates in a lot of places, 4 or 5 days at single places. But I'm going to backtrack real quick. Just a couple of highlights. 81, 82, Rick James, cameo, LTD again, without Jeffrey, which was interesting. That was 1982. 83, I did Marvin Gaye's last tour. I was a stage manager. One of the biggest bands I ever tech for. We had 3 guitar players, bass player, 3 keyboard players, 3 percussionists, drummer, 6-foot grand piano, a music director, a set of Muzzers Century 75 vibes, 6 horn players, 4 background singers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Channels for days.
Yeah, that was pretty huge. Pretty huge. 84, 85 was Sheila E., which on the Purple Rain tour, I was a guitar tech production manager for Sheila E. We were the guest star, obviously, on the Purple Rain tour. Mid-80s, Luther Vandross, Cheryl Lynn, Luther Vandross, Earth, Wind and Fire, back to Luther Vandross. This is all finishing out the 80s, going into the 90s. Did Bobby Brown towards the end of the 80s, 1988, 88, 89, Heavy D and the Boys. My first encounter with hip hop and rap tour, and also mixing to track, because Heavy D was a track show.
Gotcha.
That
Okay.
was kind of interesting. Going into the 90s, geez. En Vogue, Cash Money, Rough Riders. I did some gospel tours, Sisters in the Spirit, the Winans Family Tour, BB and CC.
Yeah.
Mid-90s, Patti LaBelle, Mary J. Blige. Well, actually, Mary J. Blige was 2000. Then I went to go back and work for her again. Then Patti LaBelle, Boyz II Men, did the 2 tour. 1994, 95, the 96 New Edition, R. Kelly, then 98 back to Boyz II Men. Recollection gets fuzzy because it's like a lot of different things that I was doing in between. I was able to find something each time I would come off of something. It wasn't like I just stayed with one act. And learned to wear a different hat. It got challenging going between sound, to teching guitars, to jumping over doing keyboards. I tried to hold off on doing drums because drums and windows were 2 things I never did. But eventually I got around to teching drums. When I was with Patti, I set up the percussion rig, which we had a bunch of famous percussionists that she would have at different times on the tour. And when they eliminated that position, thought it was all said and done, and then the stage manager says, "Nah, we'll just move you over on drums," which he was a great teacher, Joe Falcon. Amazing tuning. I mean, anything you ever wanted to know about drums. Him and his family, they have a backline rental company called Gearheads, and they also provided the gear on that tour. So got pretty good hand at drum teching, at least enough to where I know how to do it. Wasn't great, but it paid the bills for a while. And you figure mid-90s, all the way up till, mid-2000s, all the way up to 2012, Patti LaBelle.
Hmm.
Neo and Anthony Hamilton. Between those three acts, when one wasn't working, I would get a call, and somehow none of the gigs overlapped, and it kept me busy right up until I got the opportunity to go out as a head property master for Justin Bieber. And that was 2011, 2012, 2013.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you remember the first artist that took you overseas, or your first international?
Oh, I remember very well. Sheila E., 1984.
Sheila.
I carried around a 5-year passport, which was about to expire. I thought it was one of the worst investments I ever made. And as fate would have it, when she did her promo run, part of it was Europe. And it would be 1984.
Man. What were some of your favorite places that you got to travel to in this wonderful journey we call music?
I think a couple of favorite places, kind of attached to London because I've gone there often enough to where I know my way around. I have a little comfort zone there. Amsterdam, Johannesburg, South Africa, Cape Town, a couple of my favorite places.
It is beautiful down there. I got to visit Cape Town about a decade ago, and what a sight, and to be able to put your toe right there and be, the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean.
Convergence zone, yeah. Did a drive around the coast one time, and you can go right to the spot. You can actually almost see the difference where you got warm water where it meets cold water. You can actually see it. Some of the unique wildlife. Tabletop Mountain.
It's beautiful, man. What a
in the
sight.
morning, the fog rolling off the top of the mountain. Yeah. But those are some of my favorite places. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, were you with Patty? I remember you and I worked together on a few Angie dates, but there was one date where Patty was on an Angie show. We were at the Bermuda Jazz Fest. Were you at that?
Yeah, because when the high tide came in, the first 4 rows of chairs were on. People were just kicked off their skis.
Exactly. Yeah, the stage was in the water. Yeah.
So that was the last time that I was in Bermuda.
Okay. I think that was 2005.
Yeah. That's around the time when I first started working back with Patty. Because I worked with Patty 93 going into 94 with the same production managers for Boys to Men were also Patty's people, so they moved all their A people out of Patty onto Boys to Men. Yeah, and I came back, like I said, to Patty the mid-2000s.
Right on. And what were you doing right before Corona? You were out with
Earth, Wind & Fire. I'm actually my current position is the production stage manager for Earth, Wind & Fire. And we had done a corporate show up in Canada the last week of January. And we came back in. We were supposed to go back to work the end of March. And obviously, I think it was the week of the 9th. The weekend of the 9th is when things started shutting down, at least in New Jersey. So it's like wait and see. And then the last part of March came up and those dates got canceled. Fortunately, management was able to negotiate payment from the promoters of those canceled dates, and we got paid for that week. Then we were supposed to be down until early April, and I was set to do the Tom Joyner Fantastic Voyage. That subsequently got canceled. Then we had a couple of one-offs in the beginning of April, and once again, management was able to negotiate with the promoters and get us a portion of the pay for that period. In the meantime, unemployment and watching the dates slip off. We had a big Santana Earth, Wind & Fire tour lined up, which has been rescheduled for next year. So I guess towards the end of May, we got this great email that management was able to secure payroll protection from the SBA. and
Mm,
currently at home enjoying the benefits of PPP payments
I hear that.
from management. Doing,
Were there any moments in this musical career of yours where something may have been a sidetrack or almost took you away from this, or you thought about going and doing a different route and then it just tugged you back into music? Do you ever have any of those moments?
two times in particular that stand in mind. Early on in a career, um, getting fired in front of 20,000 people on stage by Mr. Rick James over the microphone, becoming part of the show. It's a little discouraging. I remember,
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
yeah, once I exited this stage and I was standing there in total bewilderment, I was like pretty much done in my mind, you know what I mean? And God works in strange ways. The road
Mm.
manager for Cameo walked up, who was the guest star on the tour, and said, "How would you like to be on that stage again tomorrow?" I looked at him like, "Doing what?" He said, "Rick just fired me." He says, "No, not working for Rick." He says, "Mr. Blackman's authorized me to hire you to work for Cameo." So guess what I did? I was back on the stage the next day. I guess after 1982, kind of got disillusioned with the business because my original goal was sound directed. I wanted to perfect a means of perfect live recordings. But by that time, I had gotten further and further away from mixing. I was doing more backline, um, big distraction. So I went back to SIR, which,
Mm.
believe it or not, you could go back and work there. Even though they said
They
you
took you back.
couldn't. Right. So, April 1983, I got a phone call and it was an offer for a gig, which I promptly turned it down. And the person on the other end of the phone said, "You didn't even bother to ask who it is." And it's like, okay, for shits and grins, who is it? They said, "It's Marvin Gaye. He's doing a comeback
Mm.
tour and they specifically asked for you." So I had to sit there and ponder on that. And that brought me back in again. But those are two things in particular that stand out.
This isn't my story, but I just want to throw something to add to that. I didn't take a gig one time, and it was for a van and a trailer, and it was three boys that were brothers that were starting on their first tour. Their mom and dad, I think, were going to tour with them, and I was going to be the tour manager slash driver. And I said no because I didn't want to do another van and a trailer, and that was the Jonas Brothers
Wow.
at the very beginning of their career. Yeah, so yeah, there's some of those moments you're just meant to do something else, and you kept pursuing music, or it kept falling in your lap, and that's really what Dreams, this interview, is about, is how people in the industry manage to continue working, because music doesn't wait on any of us.
Right.
We got to go when it calls. And what are some things you'd like to add, or maybe thoughts you'd like to share with people that are in our position when we first started, but yet now that they have this technology to get interviews and to hear information from people that have been doing it? What would you like to say to those people?
Don't be afraid to pass the torch. Time goes fast, when you're participating in the industry, and you tend to acquire a lot. A lot of it's in here. The ability and willingness to share it. The recognition that as you travel, um, places don't really change. It's the people that make the places, and this is a one of those people orientated industries. I mean, if you're not good with people, you won't last long in this business unless you're like really got some kind of niche that until somebody can find a way to replace you, that you're in. One of my goals or one of my pet projects is a social network that I've maintained for the last 12 years, Roadies of Color United International. And it's directed at diversity and inclusion in the industry. This is something I think that, especially in light of everything that's going on now, is a little bit more relevant, that the industry could benefit from. And it's one of the weak links in the chain. More women, um, people of other sexual orientations, minorities, and the goal of Roadies of Color United is to create a situation where such a social network won't be necessary in the future. That people will get the message. It's more about your ability to function in this industry than the color of your skin or your, how would you say, your diversity.
Mm. Yeah, there really is a whole group that I think someone showed me a clip of David Bowie mentioning to MTV in the early 80s why they didn't play black videos or whatnot. So, yeah, the consciousness of the world, they only are, I guess, exposed to what they see.
Sure.
And I was out there working with every color imaginable and just, like you said, it's a people orientated business. It really is about the people.
And I mean, people tend to find their comfort zone around people that they know. Um, and the industry is evolving. I mean, this industry evolves around innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. And it's changed dramatically from when I first came into business. I mean, this June makes 42 years. I've toured
Well,
every single year for the last 42 years. And it it depends on opportunity. I mean, I've been on tours for white artists as well as black artists, New Kids on the Block, Jack Wagner, Shirley Jones, Justin Bieber, and like I say, it's about your ability to put something on the table. But if nobody knows that you're out there, or they're not willing to take the opportunity to, expand on their horizons, then they don't know about you. It's a who you know business still. We have to do something to change that. Where the social platforms, I think, have been a big benefit. There's people who are being exposed to other people that they would normally not cross paths because some areas of the business are still camp-like. You work for certain artists. I know how it was when I first came in. You could only work for the artists that you worked for. They were rivals with everybody else. So you couldn't
right.
leave from one
Yeah.
tour and go work for the Commodores if you worked for LTD. You couldn't go from the Commodores to Cameo. It wasn't until Rick James and Prince came on the scene and changed the game in that they were new. They weren't an established camp. So they were open for anybody that could come and fill the needs of that particular production. So you had a lot of people jump ship, a lot of people that were in between gigs that actually had someplace else to go, and it created a little diversity in the industry. And at that point, we're talking like 1979, 78, going to 79 into 1980, that the industry changed. Lionel Richie left the Commodores. Okay, now there's the establishment of another opportunity. Jeffrey Osborne
Mm.
left LTD, and so on. So then you had all of these newer artists come on board because prior to that, most of the artists were established artists. It was the same people, the same record labels, just
Mm.
new albums. But then when you finally started getting fresh talent, and unlike the big bands, because what all those bands I mentioned had in common, they had a horn section, they had a rhythm section, they had singers, keyboard players. They were bands.
Yeah.
LTD was like a 12-piece band. Commodores was close to 12 pieces. Cameo was a big band.
Mm.
Um, when you came up with these solo artists, it was different. The band was just the backing band versus part of the group. Because in all those other
Mm-hmm.
scenarios, all those guys were actual members of the group. And I think that was part of contention for a couple of groups, Commodores, LTD, recognition that any band could play the Commodores music, but when you heard Lionel Richie's voice, guess what? You knew it was the Commodores.
Mm.
LTD, any band could play that music, but when you heard Jeffrey Osborne's voice, guess what? You knew it was LTD.
Mm.
So when contention of naming rights, LTD, Jeffrey Osborne and LTD, Lionel Richie and the Commodores. that, point of contention. It's easier for them just to
Yeah.
go on their own. So
Made me think of that old phrase, hired hand or part of the band.
just like I say, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship, because each new introduction on either of those levels changes the other two.
Man. You know what, Casey? Thank you, man. This has been super informative. And for people that are going to see this later on in life, I think they're going to get some good info from this. So thanks for hanging with us on Dreams, man. Good catching up.
You take care, man.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, peace.
See you, Casey.
Bye now.